Hi, everybody. This is the work group K8s Infra. February 20th is the date. We are recording the call, so please be kind. Today, where do we start? Today we have Linus, so maybe that's a good place to start with the image promotion. Linus, would you like to take the floor?
Sure. So I am basically paused at the moment. I've actually have my activities kind of died down the last couple days because I've been working on something else. But I mean, the meat of the project is open sourced, and Bart has raised some good points. I mean, there's been some active discussions going on the issue tracker. Basically around extending it so that it can support repositories other than GCR. I think that's the main one. I also noticed in the old meeting notes that there was a discussion about like multi-stage promotion. I'm assuming that means like multiple like location, like repositories. And also there was a discussion around mirroring, how that needs to be done. But I feel like those are all things that the promoter can do. You just need to extend it a little bit. For example, like let's just assume we're going to use GCR everywhere. Just putting aside the different Docker repos aside, like the current implementation today is to just use gcloud add tag. That in turn runs some API call, but basically it just, I mean, that syntax can be extended, right? I mean, we can just say, oh yeah, just copy it to this other registry too, and that's mirroring. I mean, because we're just dealing with digests here. So yeah, that's probably another issue I need to add to the tracker about mirroring.
Can everybody hear me?
Oh yeah.
Yes, Tim, we can hear you.
Sorry, my mic was gained to 0. So the more I've spent time thinking about, hi Linus, the more I spend time thinking about the other stuff to do with the registry, it all seems like gravy. I talked to John from the Core DNS team, and I said, you guys use Docker Hub for your thing. That's the one that I'm constantly manually importing. I mean, constantly, once every 3 weeks or something.
Yeah.
And do you think it would be an egregious request to say, hey, if you want to publish something, you also have to push to your GCR staging? And they said, no, not a really big deal. So I don't think we should block anything on that multi-registry thing. Like Docker Hub support seems nice, but I don't think that's really a problem. And in fact, it's more complicated because we don't get to keep track of those things now, right? So it's actually sort of nice that the only place we sync from is GCR. And it can be any GCR, right? Like we don't pull from a GCR repo by name, we pull by hash, which means that somebody somewhere uploaded it to GCR. Right?
Right, but you still need to reference
The tags.
I mean the path. So it's like GCR.io would be the registry, quote unquote, and then the repository path. This is like terminology that I picked up from other implementations, but the path, GCR.io / it could be some arbitrary nested path / the image name, and then you reference the digest at that point. It's not like you say GCR.io digest immediately.
I mean, I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the open source version, but the internal version, the only thing that's in my YAML is a hash, right?
Right, but then there's still the source registry, which still.
Oh, is there a source registry field? I totally missed that. I've only ever pasted in hashes.
Yeah, there is a.
Well, I guess because I'm editing ones that already exist.
Right.
Ah, okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense then. Never mind. I take back what I said. It's stupid. Go edit the video. But I think that's gravy. I think the most impactful thing we could do on this would be to get it actually working between the staging repos that we demonstrated over the last 2 weeks and a new prod repo. Once we prove that we can actually have it working on push of the registry YAML, Then we have to deal with the moving the whole contents of the existing registry over, which we can deal with sort of separately, and flipping the name. But I think if we get the process moving, we will be better off, all told, to do this post haste. And then we can figure out mirroring and other registries and whether we're going to front it with this artifact server and all the other stuff. That's all secondary noise.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think, so yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, the meat of the thing is there, and it's basically like almost like ready for prime time. It's just, there's a pending pull request for making some last minute changes, mainly around logging and stuff, and verbosity issues.
So is it running now as a Prow plugin?
So there's a Prow job that I have on my local laptop, or sorry, on my workstation. There's no Prow plugin. I mean, I did set up like a, mini Prow cluster. The point is to get that Prow configuration uploaded to some other, repo other than my personal one.
Okay. Yeah. So Linus, so can I propose this? Let's work with Test Infra, move it to their Pro, right?
Yeah, I think that was the last. Yeah, we're in the street.
Right. Yeah. So that is step one. Step two is for the manifest file themselves, we can start with K8s IO repository. We can have a folder in there for where people can request uploads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we set up like 3 or 4 GCR staging repositories. So we will enable just those for now. We'll add entries in the K8s IO /manifests or whatever. And then basically let's aim for that for the next few days, and
we can take
get going.
Dims, we can take the script that we wrote last week and we can actually tweak it just a little bit, and we will get our production registry, right? We'll just have to give it a different name and stuff. And we can, let's decide on that, this week. Make that this week. Let's decide where we want to check in the metadata here. We should probably have a list of the names of the staging repos that we've created and the groups that own them. Just in a YAML file or in a text file, even somewhere under the K8s IO repo. And then Linus, we could actually create a directory for the promoter and check in sort of the initial YAML file. And then once your Prow job goes in, we can actually start testing against that real YAML file.
Okay. So yeah. I can help with creating the directory and the YAML file in the K8s IO repository, Linus.
Okay.
And then if we can get somebody like Jeff to help you with Jeff, is there anybody else you would recommend? XT?
For what exactly?
For Prow, integrating, basically running whatever Linus have.
Yeah, probably somebody else on my team. I'll see who else wants to, if someone else can volunteer, but probably be somebody else on my team would be probably a better person.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as we know who that is, right? So right. Can we aim for this, Linus? Tim, does that sound okay?
Is there any reason we can't do that between now and the next time we meet?
No.
Okay. I can make time. I've been able to make some time on Friday mornings usually in order to spend some time on this. Can we agree to get a smaller group, maybe Dims, Linus, myself, and whoever Jeff wants to nominate for the Prow side, just to regroup and see what's in between us and an actual working demonstration of this?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yes. I don't want to volunteer you, Linus.
No, I mean, I really do want to get this thing, working and shift. So I'm highly motivated. I guess, yeah, I'll start with uploading the Prow configs to Test Infra or somewhere, and we can start chewing away. Right. Or I can start chewing away.
No,
okay.
we'll help you, Linus. Bart has also,
most of it's done. It's just a matter of permission bits, right, and just having the right targets set up. which is what Tim mentioned about, setting up the right registries and with the right
So
permissions.
we scripted this last week for the staging repos. So I now know, I feel like I know everything we need to do to set up a proper GCR repo from a script,
Cool.
including all the permissions and everything else, and minimal access, right? So it's only a Google group that has access to a certain set of permissions. That's a done deal. I think the only thing I'm waiting for now is, where does the YAML file live, and is the proud job running that's actually going to sync it?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we can meet up on Friday again, just to check back on this. I guess you said Friday mornings is when you're.
Friday mornings is when I usually have time. Let me just quick check.
Okay.
I marked it for perf, but I could do that. Yeah, Friday morning sounds okay to me. If it's okay with everybody else, I know Dims is East Coast, so he's +3 from us.
Yeah.
That's fine with me as well.
Yeah, if anybody else wants to join, just ping me and I'll send out an invite. Okay.
Perfect.
Linus, the only other question I had for you was the code that you have is somewhere in a Google-owned repository. Is that okay to leave it there for now? You don't need to move it anywhere for this thing to work, right?
No, but there is a process that is like internally happening inside Google Cloud Platform legal to get it moved to, or like to transfer ownership formally from Google to, I think the suggested place was just Test Infra, so K8s Test Infra, or was it K8s Release? I think.
Right. So it doesn't stop us from running the job thing, right?
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's open now. I took a peek at it this week. It's published.
Yeah.
We should talk about whether it wants to live in Test Infra or whether it wants to live under K8s.io repo. When we created the K8s.io repo, it was intended to be a bunch of YAML that was running all of our sites, but now there's actually some programs and scripts and tools under there, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take the note of that and make sure to mention all the different possibilities. It's still going through like legal stuff. They're like,
yeah, of course.
Right. And it's not a rush. We don't need it right now for getting things off the. Okay.
It's just like an organizational thing.
Right.
Okay.
And actually, like, what is the motivation for making it fall under Kubernetes org anyway? Does it matter?
The main input I got from Ben the Elder was that there will probably be more eyes on it and possibly more contributors, just more visibility. So I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, it's just probably more people.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's not always.
You can always try.
Okay.
Contributors.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Linus. I'm excited. I feel like we're almost there.
Yeah, exactly. I feel you right there. Yeah.
This has been a long process, but we're almost there. And then our weekly or biweekly readouts of our billing report will actually be meaningful, Dims.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. Next topic. Justin, did you want to talk about the artifact redirection stuff and how far you've gotten?
Sure. So actually, I had some good feedback from Tim about maybe like that I was getting a little bit carried away with the technology and that maybe we should start with the basics, which is like serving artifacts that are not images. And so I actually put together a doc, which is later on the agenda about like the MVP for serving from a bucket, and that we can then like serve it from a GCS bucket fronted by a GCLB, a Google Cloud Load Balancer, which can do SSL. It won't do any of the redirection. It won't do any of the mirroring, but it's a first step. And then we can look at the artifact, the 302 redirector service as a second step. And it shouldn't actually break anything, as it were. So I think there is a PR to do the redirector service, but it implements so little functionality that probably the first step is to get some blob serving and start to gather statistics on how much does it cost, what is the latency, what is the availability, particularly in like regions that might have firewalls like China. So yeah, I put together a doc later on I put together a strawman doc, which we can discuss later on. But if people like it, I'm happy to turn that into a KEP, and we can start serving artifacts without blocking on the 302 redirector.
Okay. So quick question. So who is paying the bills right now for hosting these blobs? Is it Google?
For COPS?
Yeah.
Justin.
Okay. you are, okay. Okay. So
that's why I'm motivated.
Right. It's awesome.
Yes, we can certainly help with more interesting billing reports.
Right. Anybody on the call interested in this work? Going once, going twice.
So I don't see it as that different from the GCR problem. It has a different sort of front end for push and pull, but otherwise it's, I think, the same problem. So I don't want to distract Linus yet, but maybe this is something we want to extend the promoter to handle, or make a fork of the promoter that handles just plain old GCS, or something like that.
Right. So eventually, Tim, do we want other people to host the binaries and we'll be able to redirect to them?
I think that's the ultimate goal here, is to make sure that we have a federatable mirror set, right? That basically anybody who wants to can host a mirror of our artifacts, and we can figure out how to rely on them. And that's the sort of cryptographic stuff, and that's the distribution of updates stuff that I don't have a full comprehension of, although I've learned a little bit more about it in the last few weeks. I think that is entirely separable from the let's just start serving stuff from a place that's actually paid for, not by Justin.
Sounds good. Okay. What else do we have? I'm going through the open discussion section. So permissions management, Hippie Hacker. Was this something you wanted to talk about?
I just wanted to get a little bit more transparency in how we're setting who has access and that list, and eventually be able to look at some type of auditing for different actions. In trying to understand where we are and who has access now, it's been difficult to we talk about the changes and they get implemented, but there's no transparency in who did that action, particularly for IAM policies.
You mean
what permissions were granted.
Do you mean specifically like who's in which Google group?
That, but also which groups are attached to which services, like the IAM policy itself. Because there's different ways of applying it. Maybe there's users in there, maybe there's groups in there, maybe we don't know. It's not available.
Sure. For the most part, I mean, the reason it's not written down right now is it's almost one for one. The group with a name corresponds to that permission. There's no individual users on the GCP projects except for the people who have like org level access. Like DIMS does not have personal access to any of these projects. He only has access to the groups. We should write that down. Ideally, we should have a YAML file that describes which group has which people in it and would actually resync those groups based on that. That's another separate project, I think.
There's a good suggestion about just dumping the IAM policy, and we could definitely do that and check that in, and it would be interesting to read.
Yeah. Sure.
It would help in understanding and re-implementing that, because part of my passion in being involved with this is to document how we do this as a community so that other communities can pick it up and do the same.
Sure. I mean, we could get meta here, create a group that is IAM readers, and give that group access to all of the GCP projects, and then let somebody write a program that periodically dumps that.
I'm interested in that, and also interested in the auditing side, like trying to provide the infra for the transparency and what's happening, because we talked about the transparency and where we're spending our money. But also might be interesting to have things around, and not every single event, but definitely things that change are involved in configuration change or possibly metrics.
Sure. So I would be happy to try to figure out what the right permissions are to give access to the org's IAM to a particular group if somebody's hippie willing to sign up to write the program that starts the dumping and auditing.
Yes. I'll put an action item for us to figure out.
Sure. Let's find an hour to work.
That I am dump.
Find me an hour that isn't at 5 in the morning for you, and
sounds good.
and we'll collaborate over Slack, and we'll find the right permission set that gives you access to that.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Hippie Hacker, do you have an issue open already?
No, it was just a conversation. I wanted to gauge interest before I started tossing in requests for action.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for that.
Okay, what else do we have? Justin, Firebase.
Yes. So this might not be a fully baked request yet. Some of the sub-projects are trying to figure out where to host their docs. They like Firebase. I'm trying to drill into exactly what functionality from Firebase they are using. As far as I can tell, they are using it as basically a static website. So I don't know if we have a better answer. But the obvious question was like, they didn't want to use Firebase because it was a paid thing and they didn't know who would pay for it. That feels like something this group should do if we want to use Firebase, but I also don't know if we want to recommend Firebase or some other alternative.
Specifically for hosting docs.
I'm sorry, yes, this is for hosting docs.
So I didn't even realize that Firebase was a docs hosting site.
You do Firebase deploy and you can deploy any website you want.
What does it use as a templating system? Is it Hugo or?
There's a link that was in the, it doesn't do the templating. The templating is done client side in a build process, and then Firebase deploy effectively does a.
David, you had something to say here.
I was just going to say that we right now would only use Firebase in order to host static files, and those static files are generated using Gitbook and npm. The main advantage for us for using Firebase is that's what the Kube Builder project also uses now. So we like the parity we have for the work we do and the work they do. And then I've spent a lot of time trying to use GH pages, and it looks like it might be possible if we split our docs repo apart from the cluster API, but we think there's value in keeping the docs as part of the source code because the docs actually embed source code as part of the generation. And so that's how we keep the docs in sync, is we don't cut and paste code quotes, we actually embed code quotes and then automatically generate the static HTML. So for us, there are advantages to keeping the documentation with the code, and Firebase appears to be the most straightforward way to deploy those static HTML files.
So the other docs teams are using, or some of the other docs teams are using Netlify. Is there a problem with? I don't have a horse in the race. I don't actually care which one we choose. What I hope is that we don't choose two.
So my belief is that Netlify is, because it's used by the broader community for the core Kubernetes documentation, is a better solution. I think it's also more complicated. So as a longer term plan, I would like to see Netlify-based documentation in Kube Builder, and then any projects that are built using Kube Builder could also inherit that same documentation system. But that's a larger scope thing than what I was trying to accomplish.
Before we proceed, I have to highlight that our current credits from Google are covering only GCP, while Firebase is not a part of GCP, so these credits are not covering them. So we also have to figure out on the billing side if we'll decide to move forward with Firebase. If we, Firebase offers the free tier, but if free tier won't be this task, we have to also solve the different billing question.
So Ihor, what would be a good way to raise this request using the service desk? CNCF service desk?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, David, CNCF has a service desk where you can create a ticket. That's where we can we have to write like little proposal saying this is what we want, this is how we are going to use it, and then they will assign somebody on the CNCF side to work with us on it. But then this group will definitely be interested in knowing the progress and whether you're stuck and things like that. But that's probably the right way to approach this question. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. I'll put in a request today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if Dims, if you, Aaron, as the group leads can do it, it would be easier for us.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe when David is creating the request, he can add the two of us to the request. Does it help?
So the service desk was primarily intended for the project maintainers, like the project leads, working leads, SIG leads, and so on. So if you can work with David and compile the similar requests to the service desk and submit it there, it would be easier.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll help you, David. We'll do it together, and I'll put my name as whatever the primary stuff. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Then the next thing was HUI, Cluster API, Container Registry Account for CI.
Hi, this is Hui. This is my first time here, so say hi to everyone. I probably missed a lot of context, so probably need guidance anyway. When I'm working on this E2E test for Cluster API main, and it's non-provider specific, and it's require container registry to store those CI images. So my question is whether this group can help to support this. I'm looking for guidance and solutions.
So the main Cluster API repository, what kind of images do you create, and who's using it right now?
So this is the first kind of E2E test I'm building, and it's going to build the controller manager into container, both the main controller manager and also the provider. There's an example, basically a stub example controller manager, and store in the container, both new server. And there's another possible option to kind of use a local registry, but I think that requires some research and experiments. And the ready solution is just to use some public registry.
And how are you running these tests? Are you using Kind?
Yes, I'm using Kind and also Pro.
Okay, so if you're using Kind and Pro, the Kind folks have added a side loader for loading images, especially since you're talking about images that you're building and testing immediately and not something that an end user is going to pull.
Right.
I'll show you where it is and how people are using it. I had the same request to the Kind folks for a while now because I wanted to test conformance image. There is a conformance image. I wanted to test that. So I don't think they have the Kind has a release yet with this support. So all we need is like wait for them to make a release. The other option of creating a local repository, I have a small script for that as well. So I'll share that with you later. Just ping me on Slack. I'll show you these two things.
Okay.
For now, I don't think you need a specific repository as such. The main thing here we are trying to think about is like, how do we publish repositories which somebody outside of our community will end up using? And that doesn't seem to be the use case here, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'll ping you. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. Okay. XD. you want to talk about the TLS automation, please?
Yeah. So basically, just kind of wanted to follow up and see what we can do to move along here. As I noted here in the notes, since last meeting, I experimented, and I created a PR which uses Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt to generate a TLS certificate for GCS Web, and basically tested that out at least local, or not locally, but like on my own cluster. It seems to work, so that works. I don't know if that's some direction we want to move forward or not. I know there's also, some thought of trying to use the GK managed certificates, but that doesn't support multi-SAN, multi-subject alternate names, I think. So like we can't use it with the K8s.io redirector because, we have a whole bunch of subdomains there. So I don't know if we want to continue to move forward with Cert Manager. I know James has already reviewed that. I appreciate that. So just kind of trying to figure out like, what do we want to do, if there's any strong opinions one or the other, or how
I'm fine to move ahead with Cert Manager. I haven't looked at your PRs yet. They're flagged in my mailbox, but I haven't had a chance to look at them yet.
Okay. Cool. I wasn't sure if it was like there was some reason we didn't want to move forward, or if everyone thinks that's fine. Just it's a matter of just.
No, I think the managed cert stuff would be great, but it's not ready yet. So whatever, we'll do what we need to do to make it work. I guess this means we have to switch over the redirector to an ingress, though, right?
Yes, that is something we'll still have to do. So haven't done that yet, but this is, once we move it to an ingress, it should be really easy to set up TLS for it.
It should be trivial to move to an ingress too. There's no routes or anything, right?
Right. Yeah. So should be pretty straightforward to do that.
Okay.
Which cluster is this going to run in? I'm sorry.
Sorry, we can run it in our current utility cluster, which will eventually become the cluster that you are going to birth.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because like I am intending to burn down the current cluster. So I was like, before we burn down our certs, let's.
We are not in that very googly state where the old one is deprecated and the new one is not ready yet. So the old one is still in full form until the new one is ready.
Okay. So XD, you are unblocked.
Yeah, it sounds like just need to we'll get this approved and we'll continue to move forward, and then we'll have everything automated before April or whenever.
Okay, sounds good. Before we switch to the project board, did anybody else wanted to talk about something? We have a few new people here. Arno, James, Alar, CJ. Aaron, you haven't said anything yet.
Maybe I would like to say hi, hello from me. I'm Bart, and I'm working at VMware with Tim. And I'm open to help you guys. So if there is something which I can help you with, I have time, and I would love to help. That's what I wanted to say. And
great, welcome for everybody who's in that boat. And for the sake of the recording, we have put together a list. It's in the notes of like 75 things that need to be converted over. A great number of them block on getting a cluster up and running. That's what Justin's been pushing on. I feel like we're pretty close. Maybe one more big push, and we could have a cluster that we're actually really happy with. What do you think, Justin?
Yes, I think the big blocker is tearing it down and putting it back up again. So we have a cluster. It is fine. I think we need to figure out some more stuff about permissions, but it's okay.
Yeah. I want to play with the permissions, and I want to script the heck out of it. It was really enlightening to script the GCR staging stuff. We need to go back and script the DNS stuff also. But I feel like we're pretty close to it, and then we could start moving things over piecemeal. And once they're moved over, then there's ample opportunities for people to help.
All right. The publishing bot is already running there, so we are already in production.
in Justin's cluster?
Yes.
That's why I call it my cluster. Let's be clear. In the CNCF about to be burned down cluster, and that is why I have not burned it down, because Dims did put the where it comes from and how to redeploy it, but it sounds like it's not trivial, so that's
okay. So we could run it in the real utility cluster that only Google has access to right now while you're tearing it down if you want to make it
it's okay. Even if publishing bot is down for a day, nobody will notice, so it's okay. It's not such a big deal. Only when we are cutting milestones will people notice, and when we are not cutting milestones, we just cut a milestone yesterday morning, so we have about a week, when it can be down.
Okay, I'll burn it down.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, maybe a good time to remind you that March 7th is the code freeze date, so people start to get really jumpy and jittery around that.
Right. it's better to do it now than later. Yeah.
Well, and honestly, like from my point of view, I'm going to start getting super busy as the code reviews start to fly in. I've already started on the big API reviews, and these are all multi-hour code reviews. So my ability to make time for this will probably diminish as we get towards code freeze.
Right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
The next, so actually the next milestone that we cut, 1.14 beta 1 gets cut Tuesday, February 26th.
Okay. We'll be ready by that time. Okay. Okay. Anybody else wanted to say hi? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say hello. I think I know some of you already. I work at JetStack and work on Cert Manager and Kind. Again, mirroring Bart, just here to help if there's anything I can do. So I'll keep an eye out on the issue board once we've got that cluster.
And Arnaud says in chat that he's here and that our meetings are really unfriendly for the EU. Yeah, talk to Hippie. This is 9 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. California time. I'm willing to go a little bit earlier if it helps make people happier, but that is really bad for Hippie, who's on New Zealand time. If we can go a little bit later, which is bad for Europe. I know some of the folks in Europe, depending on, I guess, where you are, maybe later is better. I've heard this at least from some of our European teams, that they'd rather have a meeting at 10 o'clock at night than 6 o'clock at night. So I guess we're always open to renegotiate the meeting time. This one was hard fought, so
Right.
we'll do it if we have to.
Yeah. Okay. So before we jump to the project board, I think I forgot one thing. Ihor, did you have an update on how much we spent? Ihor?
No, Ihor? Let me see if I can pull up the billing page right now.
And while Tim's doing that, one thing that we did skip over is the link to the artifacts proposal that will.
Speaking of billing, we have.
Ihor, you're breaking up.
I was just going to ask for comments if anyone wants to have a look at that and have a look at the
Attach the
artifacts proposal.
PDF.
That'd be great.
Report to our to the Google Doc.
Ihor, we can't hear you, man.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, so the report is attached to chat and the meeting note.
Okay.
So I have an opinion on this billing report. It doesn't, since we talked earlier about an IAM policy and trying to understand what groups had access to what things, I want to understand spend at that level. If we have different efforts, I want to understand the spend related to these efforts. Looking at this Google Doc, I can't tell how much the currently running DNS setup is costing us versus, well, okay, I guess I can because I'm looking at Cloud DNS versus Compute Engine, but I guess I don't know how much of Compute Engine is spent on Justin's specific efforts versus any other efforts that happen to use Compute Engine.
Particularly as we have more projects in there, that is definitely fair, right? In that cluster.
Yes, I mean, all the projects are set up under the same billing account, so we have a breakdown per SKU, and I think we can do per SKU per project. I haven't figured all of that out yet. I can read off real quickly some stats if anybody's interested. The DNS, it looks like for the last 30 days, I'm trying to figure out if it's last 30 days or if it's this month. It's unclear whether it's last 30 days or this month. But anyway, the number is $20, 1996, 49,893 DNS queries. Let's see what else is costing money.
Yeah, and I think that shows up here. So I think maybe what I'm asking for is I only see one project here called Kubernetes Public, and I think what we're looking for is a project for each of the efforts, right? And I think that's sort of the way we had all the IAM stuff set up.
It won't necessarily be a project for each of the efforts. We're setting up projects as needed. We should try not to overlap the SKUs too much between projects. So Like the cluster will probably run in Kubernetes public, which means that we will show up as GCE VMs, right, in Kubernetes public, which I don't think is a problem because we can say the VMs are the cluster and DNS is DNS. The GCR storage space for each of the staging repos will have its own project, so we can divvy it up by that. But the production GCR repo will just be one monolithic thing, and it'll be hard to break that down further, right?
Can I make a suggestion? If we, for example, if we had the COPS buckets in here, the numbers would be dominated by one particular line, which is currently 0. And so why don't we, when we have one line that is dominant, why don't we try to break it down? So in this case, like a cloud storage report, we would split and try to do it by path and attribute that to the projects if we cared, I guess.
Yes, I mean, I think that'll be really interesting once the storage stuff shows up. You can already see there's the dominant factor is already the test clusters, right? I can see $20 in load balancing and SSD, and $20 in VMs, and $45 in VMs. So you're already, almost an order of magnitude higher than everything else.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like that will shortly. There will be 2 orders of magnitude or more on storage. So let's focus on that and not worry too much about the other one.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Aaron. I'm agreeing with both of you. I think we want the transparency so that we don't conflate the costs as much as possible. I'm just saying that project boundaries are not always the right boundaries. And once we get the cluster up too, we can use the per namespace billing stuff that some of the folks here are working on too. So we can actually produce per namespace breakdowns of our cluster charges.
And I will write the storage analysis thing as in return for saving my credit card.
Who are you kidding? You get the points.
That's free money.
Okay, so let's dive through the board. We have 15 minutes left. So Slack inviter, Tim, can you pull out whatever YAML you have just for the record, and then we can see if we can run it after Justin burns down the cluster.
The old one, you mean?
Yes, the old one.
I'm happy to look at it. All I changed between what's currently running and what was running before was the image name. And I don't know where that image came from, frankly.
I had a look at this and I pulled the old image and looked at like the Docker build, and it is a straight build of the upstream source, which is an open source Go program, at least as far as I can tell. So if we want to, we can pull it back up. I don't know if we want to yet, because as I understand it, there are issues around bad actors.
At this point, I just want to pull the YAML out and keep it so we can try it out or whatever, and then we can figure out what to do with it and which image to use.
Oh, I'm happy to publish it somewhere if that's what you want to take a look at.
Yes. Can you just attach it to the throw a link into the issue 177?
We could do a PR on K8s.io as well.
Yes, that sounds good.
All
right, I'll see if I can do that today. Otherwise, I'll push it to Friday. I'll just pull out the existing YAML and I will create a PR to put it in a K8s.io repo.
Okay.
Don't forget to execute the secret.
Yes, the Slack secret. Yeah. Okay, so that will help other people who are trying to get the Slack stuff back up. We already talked about the mirroring attestation. We talked about GCR repositories. Okay, this is something that folks can help with easily. If anybody's interested. We used to have a different name before we became a work group. So if anybody's interested in this, ping me, please. I can show you what all things, between me and Aaron, we can show you all the things that needs to be changed.
I'm curious what's left. I thought we had basically everything except for like the Zoom account.
Is it? I know we renamed the list.
Yeah, I renamed the list. I've renamed the channel on Slack. I changed the label. What's the last comment say?
Okay. G Suite. I guess.
Oh, right. We blew scope on this issue.
Okay. Yeah. So it's no longer the same then. Okay.
Okay. I can handle taking the blown scope and moving it into a separate issue.
Yes, please. Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Then we already talked about the TLS stuff from Jeff. We talked about the publisher bot, GK cluster, DNS, billing report, GCS bucket. We touched on it for the artifact. Okay. I think we had, yes.
Did we, I can't remember what happened 8 minutes ago. Did we come to a conclusion on what we want to do with Cluster API? Like, it's an interesting project because it has probably non-trivial test requirements, but it's a SIGs project, right? So we'd be setting a precedent for paying for SIG projects, and like, what's the plan for coming up with a precedent for how and when we want to pay for those things through the same process?
The cluster API, we talked about two things. One was Firebase. So you're not talking about that, right?
No.
Okay, you're talking about, Hui raised a question about
Right.
having a GCR repository for testing, and we said that there are alternate ways to do it. And you,
But I'm saying, thank you. Yes, that's right. That's what we decided. Do we want to address the topic of whether we should be hosting GCR repositories for SIGs projects? And does that does that change the bar for creating a SIG project, et cetera?
okay, so agree with you. We need to talk about that right now because the AWS guys will come to us next, cluster API for AWS, because they are thinking about a release. So whatever Hui asked, but is testing, but this one will be actually sharing. They have to publish images out to the world to use.
So I think we have to address both, whether we're going to cover all the testing charges and whether
Right.
we're going to cover the hosting.
Right. So at this point, I think since we are letting in core DNS and
Well, Core DNS is not a SIGs project. Core DNS is considered part of the release, right? Cluster API is not yet.
how about Kind? That's another example, right? Where
Kind is a great example.
Yeah.
It's not
We're not
part of the
paying.
release. We're not currently hosting any of their Kind testing, are we?
So that one's a bit weird. SIG cluster lifecycle uses Kind for testing. But we're not hosting like images, we're just running some compute on the CI cluster.
Right, but you could be publishing images and
Right, we could be.
Releases.
But we're not
making
currently.
releases, images. Okay.
So we don't necessarily need to handle it right this very minute, but I think it is a topic that we need to address relatively soon as we get more of our house in order. The question is, how many people are we inviting into our house?
I thought we sort of have to, like, I mean, is the idea of breaking up the Kubernetes project into sub-projects is that they are not second-class citizens, that they enjoy the same benefits as being in core, but that they aren't chained to the same release cycle, right? So I think if we were to...
I think that's right. I think it means we have to figure out what is the bar for this. We can't just, I mean, right now, basically any SIG can approve a SIG project, right? And we'll get a repo and that's fine. And nobody really cares because it doesn't cost us anything. As soon as it's actually costing money, I think we need principles and guidance for how to do it.
I think we should absolutely set numbers, but I think it is going to be problematic, or it is a pretty big deal to say that, like, there is a organizational structure that we've delegated to the SIGs, and they have sub-projects, and to interfere with that structure is I
think we should split this into two problems. There's one, who gets to create a project and when, and what do we spend on it? I don't think we need to change who gets to create projects right now, but we might want to think about what resources do they get to use.
And is there a cap, and is there, like, does it mean that we have to go back to all the SIGs and say, you can approve anything you want, but if you want to get money allocated to it, then you have to meet this new bar, right?
So my thinking here was, if they are making releases and if they have release artifacts that need to be used by other projects or the public, then that's the bar. Then they will get to use the services, not otherwise.
That seems reasonable. We'll have to write that down and ratify.
Okay, I will take an action item to write that down then.
And I think this extends into the rest of the testing infrastructure too. As are we going to allow people to run SIG projects on the same prow, or do they have to go run their own prows, etc.?
Right now, we've been very lenient on the testing side. Any project is able to run, use the pro that we have.
We've been very lenient because we're not accounting for the money.
I know. That's why. That's the problem here, right? So relating to that, I believe Jeff and you, Tim, were talking about the E2E test images. Did you guys finish that conversation?
You mean the Windows stuff?
For the Windows stuff, you guys were talking about where, well, it started with the Windows stuff, and then it turned into the E2E images are in a separate bucket.
I think we should fold the E2E images into the main GCR repo, especially once we have the promoter in place, because now we have an audit trail of who put what, where, and why. Any disagreement with that, Jeff, or anybody else?
No, I think as long as we have the promoter working, so there's a way for non-Googlers to promote those images, that sounds great. That's fine. I just wanted to have some way of not requiring a very small subset of Googlers be needed to promote the E2E test images.
I agree. And as a first step, we're going to get the promoter stuff in place hopefully this week. So let's not even bother with the first step.
Okay, sounds good.
If we fall down on getting the promoter up and running within the week, then we'll look at alternate options for short term.
Yeah. Okay. Let me quickly.
And then, sorry, just as a last item, when we do the big bulk move of all of the GCR stuff from the Google only repo to the Kubernetes repo, we will also want to do a bulk move of the E2E repo into the same place.
Just kind of one note on bulk move. I don't know if, I can't remember if this is discussed in the docs or not, but how does a release interact with that? Like right now, I think, when we do a release, we have like special permissions to push to the repo. Are we going to continue to do that when we do an official release to the new repo? Or are we going to have something that automates with the release or the promoter YAML? Or I don't know, have we thought through that bit?
I mean, I assumed it would go through the promoter YAML the same as anything else.
Okay, well, that's not currently what we do for releases, for open source releases, so I wasn't sure.
Okay, I imagine the process, it's a great point, I hadn't thought about that. I imagine the process would be push it to a staging place and then create a PR against the promoter YAML, and like the part of the thumbs upping the whole release would be approving the promotion.
Makes sense. I just don't know if we've implemented that or thought about that. So there'll be something to think about along the moving.
Awesome point. Thank you.
Okay. That's all we have in the doc. We only have 3 minutes left, so quickly go through. Anybody else has anything to talk about?
Tim, I'll talk to you about the Slack inviter thing. Somebody needs to make a deployment of that before we move it to the community infra. So I will catch up with you offline.
Okay, yeah, catch up with me and let me know what we want to do. In the meantime, I will just grab the YAML, redact the secret, and make a PR.
Okay. Thank you. So Tim, LRCJ, Devan, Arno, anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
Nothing on my end, but I just wanted to say hi and also looking for something to contribute.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Great to see so many people here volunteering. Thank you.
Right, definitely. So I think you just have to pick which of the areas that we talked about here is of interest to you. There's always things to do. We did have a boatload of things written down in the document, in the doc, especially the older docs. So just tell us what you are interested in so we can guide you further. So that's the basic problem. We don't know who's coming with what background, so we can suggest things to them. That was one of the starting trouble that we've been having. Bart said something about artifacts, so we pointed him at the Docker support for the image promoter. So you just tell us a little bit about what you've already done, or which parts you're interested in on Slack or in the next call, and then we can go from there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thanks a lot, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a bunch. Happy Wednesday.